you guys have never worked with each other before.
No. This was the first time, yeah.
Had you known each other before?
No. We had some mutual friends, but I hadn't known Tony until...
Graham was a Laika lifer.
Yeah.
He's been there from the beginning, and I came up just for this project.
How did you guys come to be teamed together?
Well, I was busy storyboarding on Coraline and ParaNorman, and I guess during that time, didn't even realize Tony was in the studio in another corner developing Here Be Monsters.
Yeah, and I'd been working on the story for a while, and it took a while to, Alan Snow's book's huge, with a cast of thousands and very many excellent plot twists. So we had to boil it down to the core story there of a boy being raised underground by these Boxtrolls characters, because we felt like the Boxtrolls characters were the most unique creation of all the creatures in the book. So I knew from an early on that there was going to be these pantomime characters that we didn't want to give the Boxtrolls. Well, we certainly didn't want them to speak English, and we weren't even sure if we wanted them to have a language at all, so that there'd be a lot of sequences that had pantomime bits, and you'd have to get their performance from their little gurgles and their facial expressions. So I was talking about that with one of the guys who knew everybody at Laika. At this time, I was in a different building from Graham, and he pointed out to me that there's this guy, Graham Annable, in the story department who does his own little short films with these little characters who don't speak. So when I saw those little short films, I was like, oh, yes, this will be the perfect guy to work on this film with me, because it's easy to talk about how we'll look at Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton and we'll have these pantomime characters, but it's really hard to do. It's a whole separate sort of timing and a way of thinking about characters. So I'm very interested to know how your different skill sets kind of fused for this film, because my understanding, Anthony, is that you have an enormous amount of experience working in the digital field with digital effects and digital animation, and Graham, if your website, which is wonderful, is anything to go by, you very much like analog animation.
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly spent good chunks of my career working as a 2D animator, hand-drawn, traditional, and I've done a bit of CG as well. But yeah, I love trying to keep things simple. I like, my art style is to try to express as much as you can with as little as you can. And when Tony, presented this project that was going to involve all these characters that didn't really speak any discernible dialogue, and everything needed to be expressed through expressions and gestures. I mean, it was like a dream job for me. And I don't know, our sensibilities just really synced up right from the get-go.
Yeah, and I've always loved stop motion. I'd worked in it a little bit before, but then I'd gone on to work on a lot of CG films. And, the whole time when you're looking for projects to do, you look for a story that really speaks to you, something that you can get into emotionally, and also a look. And I'd worked in the CG world for a while, and I worked at ILM back when they did practical effects and then moved into digital effects. And I always kind of preferred the practical effects world when you had a carpentry department and you built more things and you blew them up in the real world. So when I saw this opportunity to work at Laika and this project that was going to have such a big scale and scope to it, that it was a big action-adventure comedy like I'd always wanted to work on, but it was also going to mix stop motion in there, I just felt it would have such a unique look that it would be great. That's the rarest thing nowadays, not to just have something that's bigger and louder with more explosions, that it was going to have a real quality to it.
You just said a mouthful there, and we're going to get to that in just a second. But Anthony, if I could just address the point, and Graham, your view on this also, please, when you talk about the difference of working with physical things as opposed to digital things, why does that make a difference both in the production of a film and in the visuals in terms of the way it looks? Why is that so important?
Well, okay. I don't know, there's just such an inherent charm to how stop motion looks, and again, in this day and age where everything is predominantly CG, and it just feels like as audiences we can't see a bigger spectacle than we've already witnessed at this point.
Yeah.
Stop motion suddenly offers this, this very unique way of presenting storytelling. When I was working as a storyboard artist on Coraline, it was the first time I'd worked on a stop-motion production, and I never anticipated how awesome, how cool it was to suddenly go downstairs and look at a physical set with a puppet on it with all the lighting there. You can touch everything. You can feel all the texture and the tactileness of it. I don't know. It's just such a unique form of filmmaking.
And for me, there's always been. I always loved King Kong. You know, the original King Kong as a kid, and the Ray Harryhausen movies. There's something inherent in stop motion, something about the fact that you feel it in your gut when you're looking at it, that this world really exists, that there's real light on real little cobblestone streets, and that the fabric is real, and that you kind of goes back into your DNA. You know, anybody as a kid who's played with dolls or toy cars or model train sets where they've manipulated them and moved them around and puppeted them around, this kind of stuff speaks to you at that level, and it gets right into your dreams.
Now, having said this, and given that Boxtrolls is basically being seen as a stop-motion animation, there is digital work in it, and it does seem to embody that while there are different styles with the different animation techniques, they are not adversarial art forms. They are in fact complementary, and the work done by Laika seems to really embody this complementary relationship between the various technologies.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think we're really, for Tony and I, really fortunate that Laika has been together now for 3 films, and we really benefited from the fact that the same sort of core group of people had now made, you know, all these movies together, and were able to kind of bring the sense of scale and size to this comedy adventure of the Boxtrolls that we wanted to make. And the VFX department had really found all kinds of interesting ways to integrate themselves into the process, but without diminishing what is special about the stop-motion animation in the film. I mean, at its core, it is a stop-motion film, but we did everything in our power and used every tool in our toolbox to create an experience that was going to be bigger than your typical stop-motion movie. We wanted something bigger and brighter this time around.
Yeah, you saw the film. You saw all the way through to the end credits. Now, that artwork that's underneath the rolling credits at the end is the original art that our concept artist, Michel Breton, did, that really nailed the look of the film. So it's been a long journey from there, that once you establish the style, no matter how it's rendered, yes, stop motion is the core of the film and the seed that everything comes out of, but the style is the important thing. You know, whether it's delivered by CG, which can do anything, or it's actually built by one of our craftsmen on the set there. Once you establish that style and you just rigorously stick to it, I think that's why it feels as seamless as you said, and you know, the CG enhances the stop motion, and the stop motion enhances the CG. It just sort of goes back and forth.
You guys are very conscious about doing something that does look original, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we're in a very unique spot at Laika. We're this odd anomaly where we're really an independent animation studio. We really don't have a whole boardroom full of executives that we need to please or try to adhere to their wishes. As artists, we really get to make the films we want to make, the films that we want our families and children to see. And so that kind of frees us up to do different things, more, I think, personally, more interesting things.
And you know, if we wanted to make a film that looked like a DreamWorks movie, we couldn't do it.
I don't know if we could anyway. Yeah.
You know, it's like we're full of so many people that are different. It's just like, you know, people use. You ask somebody to start out. You know, Michelle. Our problem is holding people together to keep the looking consistent. Just because, you know, all the CG stuff, it used to be that the studios looked very different from each other. They were using different programs and stuff, but now they've sort of come together. They're all sort of using the same crayon box, where we have a lot of individual artists who do what they do, and their stuff looks idiosyncratic from anything else. And just the mere fact that we actually build everything is inherently going to make it look differently.
Now, Anthony, having co-directed Open Season, which was a franchise starter, you certainly would know about how available making something that was similar to what everything else is, and with predetermined demographics and so on, you would have been very aware of how, I guess, easy it would have been to do that, to go down the easy route.
It was a big difference. You know, one of the things at Sony, which really wanted to get out there right at the start and compete with some of the big guys, when you ask them the kind of movies they want to make, their essential answer was successful ones. And that's not really the way to go about carving out a niche for yourself of doing a certain type of film. You know, Travis never wants to have a house style, and doesn't want to make the same movie over and over again. But he definitely wants to make films. He articulates an attitude towards films like a little bit referencing the old Disney films with really dynamic emotional range. He's willing to go a little bit darker with more contemporary themes, etc. And he wants to push the medium forward a ways and also push us into story places that the big studios can't really go. I loved working, with all the great people at ImageWorks and stuff and all that stuff. But they had a really hard time for a while. They're differentiating themselves from the other studios because really their reason for existing was to be successful and to make big, financially successful films. And that's really not a guiding philosophy, a creative, artistically driven philosophy.
Given how labor-intensive a film like Boxtrolls is, and just how many details you guys have to be across every single moment of production, at what point, when you see the film, are you just watching it for the sake of the film and not looking at, we could have done this better, that could have been a little bit better? At what point do you let go of all that and actually just sit back and watch the film? Are you there yet?
Have you reached that point yet, Tony?
I'll tell you one thing. One of the last things we received is, during the growing up sequence when Eggs is growing up, they find that record album, and you hear that Italian operatic singing, which essentially all they're doing is singing the names of different Italian cheeses. And Dario wrote that song. It was the last thing he delivered for us for the score. And honestly, up until that point, that whole montage sequence wasn't quite working. It needed a spine that tied it all together. And that crazy song is what works. So right now, I look forward to that song because we didn't get to live with it for very long. We lived in hope of it for so long to save our asses because we were afraid that sequence was never going to quite gel. So when that song starts up and the record starts to play and you hear those guys singing about the Italian cheeses, I love it. And then when that kind of ends, I just have this huge sigh of relief. And then Winnie shows up and she starts talking. At that point, if I feel the audience is engaged with the movie, I relax and I enjoy it.